before this war, I was opposed to membership of Ukraine in NATO because I feared that it would start exactly the process that we are seeing now. Now that this process has reached this level, the idea of a neutral Ukraine under these conditions is no longer meaningful. And at the end of the process that I described, it ought to be guaranteed by NATO in whatever forms NATO can develop. But I believe Ukrainian membership in NATO would be an appropriate outcome.
In 2023, we will continue to work to make progress while maintaining stability and follow a proactive fiscal policy and a prudent monetary policy. We will strive to maintain reasonable economic growth and keep prices and jobs stable. Our focus will be placed on expanding domestic demand, keeping industrial and supply chains smooth, supporting the healthy development of private sector, deepening state-owned enterprises reform, attracting foreign investment, and preventing and diffusing economic and financial risks. If we work hard enough, we are confident that in 2023, China's growth will most likely return to its normal trend, and the Chinese economy will see a significant improvement. A noticeable increase of import, more investment by companies, and residential consumption returning back to normal can be expected.
The Global Collaboration Village is a pioneering effort to use the metaverse for the public good, to create global cooperation and to strengthen global cooperation in the metaverse or using metaverse technologies. And we are pleased to create this Global Collaboration Village in cooperation with Accenture and with Microsoft. So the idea is to bring all the stakeholders, governments, business, civil society, together on a continued, sustained basis. This is the next phase, the next big phase of development in the virtual world.
It's especially important for this vision of a village without borders. It's an open development process, and it is an open development philosophy. We're creating at Microsoft, through Microsoft Mesh, a software platform that will be accessible to people through a variety of different hardware devices. This particular project, in our view, is of enormous importance for the world because of the role that the World Economic Forum plays in the world. This is an opportunity to create a village without borders.
Okay, you see it all there in Davos. Just the punch list. Let's go back at the top. That's Henry Kissinger. Of course, the First Lady of Ukraine spoke today. All the U.S. senators were up there. Joe Manchin, Kristen Sinema. And I told you, Kristen Sinema looked like an extra from Zoolander, right? I can't even get my head around the outfit she had on. But they're all singing the high praises of Ukraine. Now, Kissinger is saying it's appropriate to make Ukraine a member of NATO. That would guarantee a direct military conflict with Russia, direct military conflict. When the very moment the Republican Party in the House is saying, whoa, 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 even Washington Post reporting this, I don't think we're going to be shoveling money into Ukraine. We're not going to be throwing it into the furnace to burn it like we've been burning it, $100 billion so far, and of course into the charnel house of Ukraine, where the women and children are getting pounded every day. Then the Chinese was Li He. You probably remember him for people who are not listening to the podcast or on radio. Li He was is the vice chairman. I think probably the smartest of the senior people in the Chinese regime. I've dealt with him many times. Li He, lead negotiator for the deals that we did with the Chinese, and he was on the stage with Donald J. Trump on January 15th of 2020. When they knew they had the COVID virus already, and they were there to sign the what's called the mini deal. He was there with a contingent of CCP members. Who knows how many were already sick with COVID at the time, but that's Li He talking about. And remember, they're putting the onus back on the United States about the defense of Taiwan and the Straits of Taiwan, what we call Silicon Valley West, because he's telling the world, hey, we just had 3% growth, but we're going to go back to our traditional growth, 6 to 8%, and we are going to be the engine that drags you out of a global recession. So don't mess with us. And of course, then you've got the Bond villain, Klaus Schwab, and he's there talking about, and remember, this whole thing is about, they don't want to mention Build Back Better. They don't want to mention the Great Reset. They don't want to mention how they've so botched this last crisis. What they want to talk about is climate change, and as Savannah Hernandez just reported, mental health. Mental health with younger generations, climate change that drives mental health. And then, of course, you've got to get to the metaverse. There are all kind of announcements on the metaverse and what they call the borderless city, all that. Talking about mental health, we have Lindsey Graham. No, not that Lindsey Graham, although I got a bone to pick. President Trump announced there's some things I can't understand. He announced they're going to do the smaller event in South Carolina. He's going to announce and roll out his team in South Carolina. Henry McMaster is going to be the governor, is going to be part of that team. He also announced Lindsey Graham. We've got the other Lindsey Graham, the one from Arizona, and she's going to talk to us about mental health with some shocking details and footage. And we're also going to have Brandon Showalter from the Christian Post. But I got to start in Rome. Ben, I've got you up here, and thank you so much for staying up late at night. People should know Ben Harnwell is not a night owl. So thank you very much for staying up late in Rome tonight, our international editor and the host of War Room Rome, and in fact, Foreign Policy magazine, one of the most prestigious journals in the world on national security and foreign policy and diplomacy. I think it's ranked up right there with Foreign Affairs, has done a brilliant article about you, and it's already trending all over. I want to talk about that. I want everybody in our audience to read it. But first, since you've been our guy really that has analyzed what do you call them, our sociopathic overlords, I've got to ask you about Davos, because, man, I'm telling you, these guys, and we've kind of broken them, right? We broke them in the fact that they're not pushing the Great Reset. The Great Reset they're talking about is the $300 trillion of debt that the world has right now that we got to delever. They're not pushing Build Back Better because they understand they're getting crushed on that. They're pushing the poly crisis, which is a conversion of these crises, and climate change, mental health, everything underpinned by artificial intelligence. But particularly, they're highlighting Ukraine. And I've got to ask you, since you're in a capital of a country that, quite frankly, the what's I would say the populist right government, the sovereigntist government, has not exactly warmed the cockles of the hearts of maybe some of the other populists throughout the world with this situation in Ukraine. What is the obsession of the Davos set, sir, with Ukraine, that now Henry Kissinger is really talking about the red line that the Russians have just said, hey, we want to make sure you understand, as they pound Ukraine back with World War I type tactics in the charnel house, these women and children, I think it's got to be 50,000 women and children are already killed, slaughtered in Ukraine, and they're pounding every day like World War I tactics. The Russians have told us, the KGB leaders of Russia, Putin and the crowd around him have told us that they're two tripwires, and you've been on top of this since the very first day of this, and even before in the run-up to this war, that membership of the EU and membership in NATO are red lines. That will never happen, or this conflict will then expand into NATO countries. And people have to understand something. Ukraine is not an ally to the United States of America. It is not an ally. NATO are allies, and quite frankly, most of them are deadbeats because they don't pay the 2% of their GDP to pay for anything. The United States has to do it, and that's why Trump was not to break up the NATO alliance, but to turn it into something real. What is the obsession among the sociopathic overlords, brother, about Ukraine? Because I got to tell you, it's very hard for a simple country boy like myself from the South to understand. Ben Harnwell.
Well, Steve, good afternoon to you. I think basically still, even as we head almost into a year of this conflict, it's still the largest grift in town for our sociopathic overlords. You know, they sucked all of the marrow out of COVID, and now they're slowly sucking all the marrow out of the war. And it's going to change it's going to rotate on a dime. From one moment to the next. The moment they've sucked the last of the marrow out of the war, it will then be time for rebuilding, and that's when the real money gets to be made. When all of the Mr. 10%skis of the world can unite. On that point, you mentioned earlier that the First Lady 10%ska in Davos was there berating the world leaders, saying that they hadn't given enough, which I thought was sort of very tactful and diplomatic of her. The thing about Henry Kissinger, Steve, that amazes me, and perhaps you do have to be, you know, and I do use the description sociopathic overlords because it is absolutely correct, but perhaps you have to be a sociopath to be able to, again, to turn on the dime with the degree that Kissinger has done. Less than 1 month ago, he was arguing the diametrically opposite viewpoint. He's been sustaining that viewpoint right throughout the Russian invasion. This is what he said in the UK Spectator magazine less than 1 month ago. Russia has made decisive contributions to the global equilibrium and to the balance of power for over half a millennium. Its historic role should not be degraded. The preferred outcome for some is a Russia rendered impotent by the war. I disagree. Now, how you get from that to the diametric opposite viewpoint, which is now arguing, is a mystery. Perhaps somebody has gotten to him. I don't know. But it's not just the speed in which this U-turn has taken place. It's the intensity of that reversal. And he didn't explain, I don't think, to my satisfaction, his motives for that decision. But it just goes to show that anyone who can do that without going from a principled position to the diametric opposite, without any fundamental cause, without skipping a beat, is certainly suspect.
People of Europe have kind of tapped out, by and large, on paying for more of this because the needs and wants of the Ukraine are massive. It's $100 billion a year plus to run the government, to pay the pensions. It's another, $100 billion to fight the war. Then they're talking about the rebuilding alone is $750 billion, which that'll be over $1 trillion. But the political leaders, by and large, and Giorgia Meloni's kind of shocking in that she's bought into it too. The political leaders, are they still pushing membership in NATO? Is that coming from the Europeans or the Americans? Because bottom line is, number one, this war is going to end in a stalemate, it looks like. They're not going to give up the Eastern Province. Russia's not going to give up the Eastern Province. They're certainly not going to give up Crimea. General Milley is in Kiev tonight as we speak, meeting with his counterparts. And we've been training Ukrainians, I think in Poland, on large-scale tank warfare along the lines of World War II. Now, they don't have the battle tanks, but the Germans are talking about it. The British are talking about it. Is this getting madder and madder as the citizens of Ukraine get more and more crushed in this charnel house? You got 40,000 to 50,000 women and children dead. You've got the European Union president said 100,000 Ukrainian troops. We know they were hearing reporting from the Defense Department is 100,000 Russian troops. So you could have 250,000 people dead within the first year. And it looks like we're watching reruns of WW1 with trench warfare. Is it the elites in Europe that are pushing this, and now Kissinger's on board, or what's your assessment?
I think it's basically to go where the long-term grift opportunities are, Steve. And in answer to your question, sadly, I don't think it is insane. I think it's if you understand what people's incentives and motivations are, it's entirely rational and predictable what they're doing. I mean, I think it's borderline evil, but there's definitely a method behind what they're doing. Look, from their point of view, from our corrupt, grifting, sociopathic overlords' perspective, a World War I type of trench warfare, which is immovable, is their ideal outcome, because there's no risk of for them of anything kinetic overflowing. But they do have, let's not forget, as the libertarians always point out, that war is the health of the state. It does give them an opportunity, if there is still an actual war, but one that is sort of basically under control, with understandable and predictable boundaries that surround the conflict. That is their perfect outcome, because it means that they'll continue to harass and rob wealth from their own citizens to send over to Ukraine. It'll be like Vietnam, only with less movement on the borders. And in the end, as I was saying earlier, from one day to the next, they'll all call it quits, and then they'll lick their lips and smack their hands and go in for the kill. Because let's not forget that the institutions that are going to be involved, primarily the European Union, possibly the United States, that money is all going to go through the building for the reconstruction of Ukraine. All of that money, all of that rebuilding money, and I think the European Central Bank had suggested it was going to be something like 3 trillion about 6 months ago. All of that money is going to go to the office of the president. All of it, everything. So we joke on Getter, calling him President 10%ski. Whatever the actual percentage is, right? We're talking trillions are going to be passing through his hands, and he'll have. There's no control of this. There's never been any control over the money that's going through there.
Not people in the audience understand. Not if the Republican House. I'm telling you right now, even Washington Post is reporting that there's 2/3 of the people in the House. No way. And that's because of the people back home, this audience. I want to turn to Foreign Policy, one of the most prestigious journals out there. Amazing interview of you. Profile of War Room, Rome, what you're doing there, particularly since we're doing the Italian language. Give a quick summary of that. And I want everybody in the audience to read it. And I want everybody in the audience to be a force multiplier and get this out everywhere, because it's kind of a model of what we're going to try to roll out here in the War Room. Tell us about the article, Ben.
Well, it was several months in the making, several sit-downs. It's a very fair article. Don't forget that Foreign Policy. It's basically the in-the-house newsletter of the international rules-based order. And we're talking about wars and conflicts. There is a war between the economic nationalist movement and what Foreign Policy, their globalist, borderless agenda. So they came in behind the scenes, watching how we put the War Room Rome together. I thought, actually, given the fact that there is an unbridgeable divide between our two organizations, they wrote a very fair article. I was particularly pleased that they concentrated on how we set the news agenda on War Room Rome. That is to say, we try to go, and it's exactly what we do. It's exactly what we do on the principal show right now. It's we go behind. We don't just go for the clickbait stories. We go behind what the stories are and look at the motivating factors and try and explore what the narrative is for that, so that people can have an understanding of what is driving the events that shape their lives. And when you can identify well that narrative, you're then arming people so that when they're ever more taking on their own sense of agency to affect their own destiny with that narrative, they will then be better placed to predict what is happening and to act accordingly. And there's no one really here in Italy doing what we're trying to do in the way that we're trying to do it. And I thought Foreign Policy did an excellent job in sort of covering that aspect of our editorial policy. I do recommend it's not behind a firewall or anything. If folks want to, they can go onto my feed, they can go onto your feed later, or the War Room feed. It's going to be on all three feeds. And
we're going to put it up on all the feeds, but right now you get it on Ben's.
Yeah.
And if Grace
Absolutely.
Chung and Captain Bannon can push that into all the live chats, Carly Bonet and all the team over at Midnight Rider, all the different sites that follow us live, and have people in the chat. I really want people to read this and push it out, because a lot of work from Ben, and the show's an extraordinary show, and we can't wait to do more. And we've used Ben as a test case because he's done such a great job for us over the last couple of years. Ben Harnwell, we'll let you go to sleep real quickly. How do people get to War Room Rome, and how do they get to all your great content, sir?
Thanks, Steve. Well, War Room Rome, that's our content that goes out in Italian, and then at War Room Rome. And then the following day, it comes out on my own personal feed at Harnrow with the English subtitles. So folks can follow either of those two accounts. But I'm on at Harnrow constantly.
I watch it every day, a day late, so I can watch it in English, sir, with subtitles. Fantastic, Ben. Thank you so much. Thanks for staying up in your analysis
Steve.
of the sociopathic overlords in Davos, sir, which you're still the best in analysis of. I want to, Ben just said something about the show, the events that shape your lives, and get behind the scenes. I want to go to Arizona now. Lindsey Graham, and can I play the clip first? Let me play this introductory clip. And then we're going to bring Lindsay on.
I am at the gym in Arizona. He was undressing in the locker room, top off, bra off, and Paul Bixler was in the women's locker room, and he looked at me, and he looked at my breasts, and I have called the police.
Until recently, he's used the men's locker room. So he agrees himself that he's a man.
I have told the police that I was in the locker room. A man was in there. I was getting undressed. He looked at me. He is a man in the women's locker room. And the response is that this is a touchy, sensitive issue in society.
Yep, there he goes, women's locker room. There's the man going in the women's locker room. Hope there's no one undressing in there. Hope there's no naked women in there. Since there's a man why isn't anyone warning the women?
Just so everyone knows, he's not being arrested. We are at a point where we're catering to society instead of facts. This is alarming. Women's rights are being violated. And I'm not going to put up with it.
So Paul, if you're a female, why do you use the men's restroom sometimes and the women's restroom sometimes?
Please stay away from it, please. Yes, politely, like I said.
He will suffer no consequences for this.
Okay, welcome back. I want to go to, and Lindsay, we got a couple minutes on this side, and I'm going to hold you through the break. We're proud that we introduced a lot of the audience to the Daily Mail of London, which is the largest newspaper in the world and the largest website. Your story was the number 1 or 2 story on the way. Give us the background here, because there's more than just what you showed there. What is going on with this story, ma'am?
So this man has been on the school board, an elementary school board in my community since 2020. He was not elected. He was placed on the board. He has to either step down willingly or be recalled. And he refuses to step down, even though parents are outraged and parents are speaking up at the school board against him. He wears women's clothing to school. He wears them to the events, into classrooms. He uses the little girls' restrooms at school events. This man is a predator, and his behavior is setting the precedent for pedophiles to start using women's facilities, violating our rights and putting little girls and women in danger. And I've spoken up against this man personally. I was aware that he used the same gym as I did, but up until this happened, I was told he used the male locker room, and he is no longer using the male locker room. He is now using the female locker room.
Okay, before we go to break, this guy's actually, this is the thing that boggles people's minds. He actually sits on a school board, and he was appointed to sit on the school board, ma'am?
Yes, he has a background in education. And so up until he started cross-dressing and demanding that children identify him as a female, he was a great candidate. The school board members now have said that he needs to step down. He needs to resign. He's a distraction to the community. He's a distraction to the kids' education. But he refuses to step down. He says that his behavior and his gender identity is not a problem.
Lindsay, if you can hang on for 1 second, we're going to take a short commercial break and return in Arizona in a very disturbing story. Lindsay's confrontation in the health club really made international news. It was the number one story on the Daily Mail site over the weekend. I think it was on Sunday in a weekend that had a lot of news. Very, very disturbing. We also asked Brandon Showalter to join us also. He's been the expert of actually getting to the bottom of all this and explaining to the audience. Okay, short commercial break. We're going to go back to Arizona, to not the South Carolina Lindsey Graham, but the Lindsey Graham that's confronting these men going into children's and females' locker rooms. All next in the War Room.
If you want girl parts and you don't have them, you can do special surgery where they turn your penis inside out and there's a vagina inside.
The preschool sends out a letter to all the parents announcing one of our students is now Rosa, and we would love you all to come and celebrate and support her. And he was 4 years old. I didn't even know if he knew what a pronoun was. I go to the daycare a week later to drop him off, and it's Rosa is written on the entrance sheet where I have to sign. Rosa is on his cubby. It's everywhere. And they would just look at me and listen. They would say, Helen, you should really learn to accept this and celebrate it. And I'm like, celebrate what? Celebrate that my child's going to be put on hormones and his penis will never grow and he'll never have a normal sex life and he'll be on drugs for the rest of his life?
This was when she was like 15. I remember being up in her room and she said, I'm trans and I need a new name. Somehow I got a text from CVS. Your prescription for TES is available. She's like, it's mine. You can't take it from me. You can get this by making a phone call and having a tele appointment. I mean, there was no psychological evaluation. There was nothing. Where does our species go if you can cut off your body parts like this?
Sean had set up an appointment with an endocrinologist at the hospital to try to get hormones. I'm looking at it as, hey, this kid just needs to explain to him, hey, he's had a lot of traumatic events through his life, losing his leg. We had an older son that died of a heroin overdose when he was 8 years old. He loss of his mom, being diagnosed with cancer again. I mean, I went through I said, all these things have to have a big effect on him. When I had the appointment with the psychiatrist, I was just blown away when she turned around and told me that he's definitely transgender, and you are an unsupportive, abusive father. I'm trying to keep him alive.
Okay, welcome back. 17 January, Tuesday in the year of our Lord 2023. That's from the movie Dead Name. We had Brandon Showalter, I think, last night talking about that. I want to go to Carly Bonet and the team over at Midnight Rider have already got up the Patriot Barbie, Lindsey Graham. Lindsay, here's the thing that's disturbing. You've confronted this at the school board. You were the mom who dressed up as a cat to kind of show the absurdity of this. Here's what, and I get this from the audience all the time. Besides people like yourself, these brave patriots are saying, hey, this is kind of madness and we can't put this pressure on our children. Are others, like, for instance, when you found out that this individual, the school board member, was at your health club, had other people complained beforehand? Had other people gone and women and said, hey, you got a guy that's going into the women's locker room. I got a problem with that, ma'am.
I get the feeling that they did, because when I approached one of the employees at the gym, he sort of kind of, oh yeah, here we go again. We were told by management that we were supposed to let him use whichever locker room he felt comfortable. And so as far as I'm aware, he was using the men's locker room. Somewhere in the last, apparently maybe week, I don't know, he began using the female locker room. And even when I called the police, they already had a description of him at the ready, like someone else had already complained even to the public officials. So he is doing this. Women are complaining, but it's sort of like when you're at Walmart and some guy's kind of coming up behind you and creeping on you and following you around the aisles. I am not going to go and call the manager of Walmart. I'm going to call 911. And so these women, I feel terrible. They've gone to the front desk and said, hey, I'm not comfortable with this. This is a women's locker room. This is clearly a man. Can you guys do something about it? The answer is no. The answer is let's coddle to the man with a mental illness. Let's let him ogle women in their private spots. And we don't know if he's got a camera. We don't know if he's taking pictures. We don't know what he's doing in there. It's a man. And at the front desk level, they were told he is permitted to use whichever one he feels most comfortable.
And Lindsay, hang on 1 second. I want to bring in Brandon Showalter from the Christian Post. Brandon, you've probably done more, Libby Evans and yourself, Libby from Post Millennial and yourself. You've done so much investigative reporting on all of this. And like I said, I think you had it on a couple of months ago. I said this kind of came for a lot of people like out of nowhere, it seemed like, but it's obviously been building for many years. Is this an example? Are people being cowed now that they feel uncomfortable? Are there social pressure that if you say anything? I mean, it's pretty stunning that this could take place. First off, a school board member, but it could take place in a public workout facility. People pay money to go to, and women are sitting there, and you got a guy that just thinks it's fine just to walk into a woman's locker room. A couple of years ago, a guy would be arrested immediately for that. It's not even a question. What's going on?
Well, Steve, as I like to say, gender ideology is a boundary breaker, and it is a particularly parasitic kudzu. It just overtakes everything. And I think the example is quite good when you see a man who's invading a space where he doesn't belong. But as you saw in the trailer, in the film Dead Name, which is available on Vimeo now, the most egregious boundaries that it breaks are those between families. It ruptures family ties. It erodes the parental-child bond. It just sows destruction and discord wherever it possibly can. But it does rupture a lot of things within the community. It just erodes social trust. Indeed, we didn't have to worry about this kind of ideology. Indecent exposure, we thought, used to be a crime. Well, all of this is quite disastrous, and it has been building for some time. And as you mentioned, Libby and I have done a lot of reporting on it, but this has been top-down engineered. This is not a group of, truly dysphoric individuals who are, wanting civil rights or human rights. This has been engineered from the top down. A lot of forces within the medical industry. I've done a lot of reporting on the medicalization, and that's the biggest fear I think that parents have, certainly expressed in Dead Name. But it is quite egregious to see this erasure and erosion of single-sex spaces. And if you have a family and you're parents and you have kids, you're right to be concerned about that. And every parent just wants to keep their kids physically safe. And I think women do indeed deserve the dignity of having their own private spaces. 100 years ago, they were fighting to have them, and here we are fighting the battle again. So it's a very regressive movement for sure.
But here's, and Lindsay's, here's what the thing, you could have young girls with their moms at this health club, and this guy, and he's not a small guy, walks in there, and the health club had said, oh, it's whatever makes him, it's whatever he chooses at the time. How can you have societal structures if that's starting to be the mentality, even among the corporations that feel they got some liabilities here? My point is, this thing is moving so rapidly. Yeah. And right now, there's no defining boundaries on this. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, it's a complete rejection of material reality. And it destroys everything it touches. I actually say as much in the film Dead Name right there. This is, as an evolutionary biologist I respect a lot says, reality's last stand. If you cannot acknowledge the material reality of sex, you've only got chaos. There can be no sane legal standards. Medical ethics is practically collapsed. Women's privacy, completely gone. Vital statistics. There's no area of culture where it's just not completely blown up. But again, I think the most egregious cost is that helping in families.
Hang on. I want to go back to Lindsay for a second. See, that's the point. Given the fact, that, Lindsay, that you said that every time this happened, you were going to call the police, that puts the pressure on you. Like, why would you want to go work out? Because now you got to work out. It's already invaded your space just thinking about it. And instead of having a workout or bringing the kids or just having a good time and thinking about my workout, I've only got a certain time of the day to do it. You got to be thinking, if I see this freak, I got to call the police again, and then it's going to be a whole big thing. Isn't that breaking down the basic structures of society right there, ma'am?
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous that my lifestyle should have to accommodate, and many women's lifestyles should have to accommodate this one man's delusion. And, I have said this a couple times in the last few days. I'm thankful that it was me in that locker room. I can defend myself and I can protect myself, and I believe in my Second Amendment rights. And if the cops aren't going to do anything, well, I will be armed next time I'm in a locker room and a man comes in. But there are 8-year-old girls that go to that gym, that use the daycare. There was a mom there with me that said her 13-year-old daughter comes with her. And now all of those moms, I spoke to about eight women while I was there, explaining to them what was going on and alerting them. And every single one of them said, well, I'm certainly not going to let my daughter use that locker room alone. And I'm sitting here going, well, this is ridiculous. We have the rights to that room, and we have the rights to the privacy and the safety of that room. And unfortunately, I'm going to have to call the police every time until society says, Paul Bixer, I hope that you're humiliated enough that every time you attempt to go in the women's locker room and try to label yourself a woman, I hope that you're so humiliated by the police being called, because it would never happen to a real woman. It would never happen to me. I hope that you learn your lesson, you move on. Or how about you learn your lesson, identify as your biological self, what God made you, and use the men's locker room. And, Brandon makes a great point. Satan is the author of confusion, and God is the author of reality. And Satan has confused these people to the point where, gay, straight, trans, bi, this man is straight. So he's a man going in the women's locker room and he's sexually attracted to women. Would it be better if he was gay? Could I say, okay, well, now you can come in because I know you're not attracted to me? No, but this is all confusing. These are all little details that you can't talk to this man and go, well, let's find out who you're attracted to. Well, did you mutilate your genitalia yet? Well, what hormones have you been taking? That is just confusing. Like Brandon says, sex is the foundation of everything. XX chromosomes and XY chromosomes need to stay separate. And we need to go back to, well, show me your birth certificate. If you were born a man, I am sorry, no matter how much lipstick you're wearing, or no matter how many body parts you've cut off, or how pretty your earrings are, you are not allowed in the women's locker room. Sorry, not sorry.
Lindsay, we got to bounce, but I got to ask you, what is his status on the school board, ma'am?
3 members just this last week have approached him and said, we insist that you step down. They are putting pressure on him to step down. There's another school board meeting January 30th. I plan to be there. Not sure if I'll wear my cat costume again, maybe something else. I am going to surprise everybody. But we're going to put the pressure on him. The goal is to, again, let him know that society does not accept his behavior, and we don't accept the precedent it sets in the future.
Lindsay, how do people follow you? What's the social media, your website, all of it? Because I know people are going to want to stay on this story.
My website is patriotbarbie.com. There's my logo up there, oops, over there. And my Instagram is the.patriot.barbie. And I really appreciate the support and the encouragement and the prayers. This is going to be a long battle, and I am 100% willing to fight it for the sake of everyone's daughter, including my own.
Lindsey Graham, Patriot Barbie, thank you very much for joining us here in the War Room.
Thank you, Steve.
Brandon, what she just said at the end there, it's going to be a long battle. That in and of itself, I mean, it is hard enough to be a parent in the modern age.
Yeah.
This is in your movie, and I want everybody, and it's very disturbing. It's hard to watch. It's on Vimeo. Costs you a couple of bucks. Dead Name. This movie's if the trailer's hard to get through, the movie will blow your mind. But this is reality we have right now, and people got to understand if you don't stand up to it, it's going to be very easy to roll over because you're going to be intimidated and people are going to come after you. I mean, Brandon, they're coming after you nonstop. What are people to do? We got a couple minutes here. Walk us through what are people to do right now to try to make sure they protect their family?
Well, I think the first thing that they can do is go watch the movie. I should say it's from Broken Hearted Films. I was honored to be a contributor to it. But you're correct that this is rupturing families left and right, and I think it is going to be a long, drawn-out battle. I have long referred to this as a house of cards, but because at base, what I believe transgenderism is a medical scandal, and that's the main concerns of these parents. Certainly those who have been profiled in the Dead Name movie, but you see how it just upends everything. It erodes parent-child bonds, it ruptures family ties. And what people need to understand, and you'll see this if you rent the movie, is that if you go from the schools, from preschool to a very prestigious institution of higher ed, therapy settings, whether that's a clinical psychiatrist in a hospital or just a local counselor that you might want to, help your child with if they're dealing with this, everything is captured. So people have to realize the breadth and width and depth of how many places that hold themselves out as professional, where parents might be seeking advice, not only to protect their daughters in the locker room, but also from irreversible medical harm. Libby Emmons and I do a lot of reporting on these kinds of issues, and we're going to see the medical angles, I think, emerge even more. I mentioned yesterday when I was on your show that Reuters, New York Times a little bit, and the New York Magazine Intelligencer has started to introduce some very crucial questions. Europe is long ahead of us. Many European nations are backing away from this experimental medicalization. But I think the harm is going to be catastrophic when we finally see the scope of it. And there's probably going to be a lot of journalistic work to be done to unpack all of the relational dysfunction and family rupture that has happened as a result of gender ideology invading our society. Maybe I'll do some of it. But if you want just a taste of that, go watch Dead Name by Broken Hearted Films on Vimeo. Cost you a few bucks to rent, but I promise you that you will be moved.
Real quickly, how do they get to you on social media and Christian Post, sir?
My social media, my Twitter handle is @BrandonMShow. Christian Post, all of our reporting, it's at christianpost.com. We've got a podcast series out now called Generation Indoctrination. And again, go watch Dead Name. You really won't regret it. I was very proud to be a part of this project. Filmmaker did an excellent job.
Brandon Showalter, thank you very much. Honored to have you on here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve.
I brought our own Joe Allen in. Joe, I'm going to get to the Davos part of AI tomorrow because I want to save that. I got to draft off these last two stories because you are our editor on all things transhumanism. You have said for a while, is this the predicate? Is this confusion about gender and all? Is this the predicate that makes the transhumanist movement can go forward at a more rapid pace, sir?
Steve, the transgender movement comes up a lot in the transhumanist movement. There are some transhumanists that, to a lot of people's surprise, want to use transhumanism to build up masculinity or femininity in some way. But there's another kind of parallel movement to this, which openly talks about how using technology to overcome physical limitations, especially in the case of gender, is one of the major stepping stones towards the sort of computerization or digitization of the human personality. Now, I learned recently that Martine Rothblatt, who is one of the most prominent transhumanist advocates, Martine Rothblatt is a transgender person, and in fact, I'll avoid any pronoun use, I can't stand it, but the Martine Rothblatt, founder of the Terrorism movement, which hopes to basically digitize the human personality and create some sort of digital immortality for its followers. It's an open religious movement. Rothblatt has claimed that God is technological and that that will be the salvation of human beings. Last August, it was announced that Martine Rothblatt is now on the board of the Mayo Clinic. and the president and CEO of the Mayo Clinic just gushed over that fact. The reason Rothblatt is on the Mayo Clinic board is because Rothblatt is a founder of United Therapeutics Corporation. That ostensibly, this is about life extension, it's about organ transplants, it's about gene therapies, but really, this is the biomedical extension of the transhumanist movement, not only into the corporate sector with United Therapeutics, but also into the upper echelons of the biomedical establishment with the Mayo Clinic. And so you see there two things. One, you see a personality that has basically openly declared that transgenderism is in fact a stepping stone towards a transhumanist race. And you also see the direct connection with the biomedical establishment. This is the infrastructure, and these are the institutions which make a lot of the transhumanist goals possible. It's quite disturbing.
No, it's one of the things that Brandon's been talking about, the whole medical industry, about part of this transgender. You've got, and I got a lot to talk to you about AI as the underpinnings, maybe not up in your grill as much in Davos, but the underpinnings of everything they're working on. Some of the smartest people there are reporting on this. Joe, real quickly, how do people get to all your writings, particularly now more than ever? Where do they go?
You can go to my website, joebot.xyz. You can check out my social media at JOEBOTXYZ. And of course, go to warroom.org under the transhumanism tab. That's where everything is collected.
Joe, thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Joe Allen, our editor for all things transhumanist. By the way, got Ben to stay up late tonight, the editor of International. You got Joe, finally tracked him down. I know he's working on a big project. Cameron, thank you so much. And Joe Allen, always terrific. Okay, tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. I can guarantee you one thing. It's going to be 4 hours of pure intensity. Starting at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Investigations, the debt ceiling, Davos, what's happening in the invasion of the southern border, all of it. Tomorrow morning, 10 a.m.